Right, welcome everybody. We're going to get started with our webinar today. I'm going to turn off my beautiful face here so you can see the presentation. And all right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our EstimateRocket Tactics and Strategies for Working Remote webinar. Since I announced this webinar has changed several times. As you can all imagine, we're all changing pretty dynamically here. There's a lot of things going, a lot of things changing every day. We're all reaching out for our sources to figure out, to keep up with what's going on and see how different things that are happening are affecting us. And so today we're going to talk about some strategies with EstimateRocket and some general strategies, because again, there's a lot going on here. These are certainly unprecedented times. We can all remember times similar to this for different reasons. Maybe it was the 2008 recession. Maybe it was the last major virus scare. This one's different. It has similarities to other things that have occurred, but it's different, and things are changing again very dynamically. So we have to be on top of it. So today we're going to talk about, I hope, some great things to help us all to make it through this process. We all depend upon one another, not just you folks and EstimateRocket, but EstimateRocket and you, our customers, and your customers, and your vendors like your CPA and your attorney. All those folks are out there. Everyone's on pins and needles right now. So you got to keep that in mind. And there's a couple really important things that we want to stay focused on. First of all, it's to make a plan. The first thing we do is we kind of react to everything, and then we start looking at things. The first thing I did was I sat down with my budget numbers and I said, okay, where are we? Okay, we're good. Everything's in pretty good shape right now. Let's not panic. Let's plan for some potential adjustments that we might need to make, but we're not going to panic and make big changes. We're going to assume that things are going to go well, but plan for things not going so well. So that's the big part, is making that plan, figuring out where your numbers are at. There's always things that we can do to make the numbers better, especially in the short term. We don't know yet how long this whole thing is going to last, and when the effects will start to be mitigated. We do know one thing for sure, though: it's going to end. It's not going to last forever. So as you're making your plan, know your numbers first. Decide on how you're going to communicate with everyone. There's a lot of communications that have to go on, and that's probably one of the most important things to keep people from getting overly excited or panicked or afraid of what's going on, is to communicate. And we all have uncertainties and feelings and thoughts about things, but we have to put those in perspective and we have to think them through. And mainly we need to figure out how to communicate appropriately so that people don't get more upset than they need to be. You know, these things are going to work their way out. We know that. That's a guaranteed. We know it from every time it's happened before. Are there going to be problems? Are there going to, be some people who don't make it and some people do? Yeah. But for the majority, if we do the right things, we're going to make it. So the other thing I have here is teach the needed skills. You've got team members that are working with you and for you. They may need help in understanding how to communicate to your customers and vendors how things are and what they're doing and what processes they're taking. We'll get into that a little bit deeper. But people need to be taught skills. People need to be need some help on how to communicate certain things, because these aren't ordinary things to communicate. This isn't a you need to move your car, or that piece of furniture is in the way things. These are bigger picture things, and they affect people in a different way. But mainly what's needed to make them better is just to communicate them effectively. If you communicate them effectively and you're honest with people, people will understand that. As long as you're doing the right things, being smart, generally things are going to get along. We'll talk a little bit more about government and regulations and what we need to be cautious of there. I will throw out that caveat that I'm not an attorney or a government specialist. I've been, like everyone else, been reading, trying to figure out exactly what's going on and how exactly the different things affect us. But it's important that you do that on your own, each one of you. Every single one of the 50 United States and Canada and other countries that we operate in are independent. So within the 50 United States, every state, there are federal guidelines, but every state is actually responsible for enforcing things and determining exactly what's going to happen in that state. So state to state, things can be completely different. I know I've already talked with customers at different parts of the country, and there are complete different situations. In some places, it's almost business as usual, and in other places, it's business has stopped. So you really need to get not necessarily just look at the national news for things. You've got to be looking at your area. Reach out to your local government first, your city or your town. They should have information or a website, and then more broadly, your state. And there are some cases where states haven't acted yet in any material way. So what happens is the responsibility actually falls to local governments, city governments, and town governments to make decisions. So again, depending upon your locale, you do need to do some homework on that and figure it out. As I mentioned earlier, reach out to resources. We all have an attorney that we work with from time to time. We all have a CPA or a bookkeeper, an accountant that we work with from time to time. Those folks are going to be good resources during times like this because that's sort of their area of expertise. So don't hesitate to reach out to them and ask the questions. Everyone is responsible for everyone else's success. So the more we can help each other, the better off we'll all be when we've gotten through this. So, and lastly, on the first slide is don't panic. Panic doesn't do anything for anybody. It really doesn't. All it does is makes it harder to get along and solve the problem and deal with the problem the way it needs to be dealt with. So please don't panic. That's a really critical factor. I know it's hard, but it's critical. We're in a time of change. No question about it. This is not going to last forever, but it is going to be painful. So we've got to work through it. And as I said before, we got to plan, think it through, and not panic. There will be many, many companies and people that will thrive through this process. And those will be the people that prepared and didn't panic and thought things through and made a good plan. So let's all be those companies and people. We'll be the ones that get through it and thrive when it's all over. These are disruptive times. We all joke and when we say, hey, we want to be the next Uber and things, or one of the other big disruptors. These are disruptive times for our trade industry. There are going to be a lot of people disrupted, but again, the people that are going to get disrupted are the ones that are not planning and not prepared. So let's get prepared. You need to know and think and probably write down how you're going to communicate with people. It's really, really important. Again, it comes to having, confidence in times of uncertainty, not cockiness or being cavalier, but being confident. If you do your research and you do your homework and you determine and decide in advance how you're going to communicate both to your people, your customers, your vendors, and really importantly, your family. This is one of those crazy times where family is really important, and your family's worried too. Your family's kind of hanging out there, not necessarily knowing everything that's going on in your business. And there are people, your employees' families are worried about what's going on because heaven forbid we listen to the news first thing in the morning. That's enough to, send you crawling right back to bed. I don't listen to the news. I read the newspaper. I read, New York Times online. I read medical resources like Johns Hopkins. Read things that have real information for you. Look at your government reports. Everybody's got a state.gov website. Those are the places where you're going to get at least honest information and not, pure made up hype and panic, type messaging. So go to those resources. So as I said, we all know family is really important. Guess I probably should. I have that last on the list, but it's one of the most important because they're the people that are going to help support you because everybody has a lot of stress going on. So, but first of all, decide how you're going to communicate. write it down, make some messages. You may have slightly different messages, for how you talk to your employees, not different in terms of honesty, but different in terms of how things are phrased and how things are worded. Different types of conversations work better with different people. You want to make sure you're speaking in a language that whoever your target is going to understand, so that they hear the messages clearly. When you talk to your employees, in addition to just talking to your employees and tell them how things are and what you're doing and what any new procedures are that you're doing and things that you have to be cautious of, you also really need to teach your employees how to communicate with your customers. We had an experience a week ago with HVAC contractor, and they came out to do some service, not from me, it was from a friend. And the tech was saying, hey, we don't know if we're going to be open tomorrow. We don't know what's going on. It's all chaos. And boy, that's the last message you want to have your customers hearing from your people. And if you don't teach your people what to say and how to say it, then that's your fault. They need to know what the messaging is coming from the top and how to express it to their customers. And a list is a good thing to give them, a checklist or description of a few bullets that how they describe how things are and what's going on. Really, really, really critical. Again, communications is everything right now. All the miscommunications we get from watching the morning news is the classic example of that. It just makes us scared. It doesn't make us any smarter. We want to make the people that we're communicating with smarter about what's going on and what we're doing about it. So communicate with your employees, communicate with your customers. Your customers need to know too. They need to know, are you open for business? Can you do business? When can you do business? And what are you doing to make sure you're keeping everybody safe if you are doing business and coming into their workplace? So how you message your customers. Again, you're going to have to sit down and actually write these things down, and don't hesitate to get help. If you've got, I hate to say this, but if you've got a marketing person, I love marketing people, don't get me wrong, but if you've got a marketing person, you may want to talk to them, because my personal failing when I explain things sometimes is I'm a technical person. I want you to know the exact specific details of how things work. But that's not always the best way to explain things to people. That's not always the best way to get people to understand what you're actually doing, because I can get lost in a sea of technical difficulties, and when I'm done, I won't even have explained what I really meant or the benefit of what I'm doing or how I'm doing it. So this is a communications thing. You've got to communicate in a way that your customers are going to hear it, and they're going to hear the message, and a good message that you want to put forth. And if it's a hard message, it's a hard message, but there's nice ways and appropriate ways to say things that when people are done listening to them, they feel okay about it or good about it. And there's ways of communicating that make people feel not so good about it. We want to make sure that we're communicating to people in a way that's going to make them feel better as best they can based on the current situation. So think through your communications. I know I'm belaboring that a bit and emphasizing it, but it's really important. And whatever your family is, make sure you give them all hugs, because that's important. Okay. Moving. Okay, so on to some things that in terms of keeping your customers engaged, what do we do right now? So in EstimateRocket, there's a few different ways to communicate. You may have some other communication tools available to you. I certainly advise using all the tools you have available to you. So to keep our customers engaged through EstimateRocket, first and foremost, you really need to check your eligibility to work. Mentioned that earlier. Every state is different. In many states, the cities are different and the towns are different. You really need to check it out. There are I think there's three major categories that companies fall into. There's the not affected by shelter in place category. That's one of the terms that gets used. There is the essential services category, and then there's the non-essential services category. So those are the three major groups buckets that are forming out there for for different vendors and customers and businesses that are out there. So you want to check with your government site. You also can check with your trade association. So some of the trade associations and certainly all of the union and state contract and government contract people, they have a little bit clearer communication on that. Now, and again, even that though, as clear as it may be, is literally changing day by day. So you have to keep checking. This isn't one of those things, hey, I checked yesterday and we were not affected by shelter in place. Well, you got to check every day because things are changing very dynamically based on what the results of testing and new things that are being uncovered and identified. So check with your trade association, check with your state, check with your attorney or your CPA. Those CPAs and attorneys are great resources in times like this because this is one of the things that they do. And they're a trusted resource for this. This is a great time to lean on them. I think everybody in our whole trade circle that we work with on all sides wants everyone to succeed as best they can. We all want things to get better. We all want to do the best we can. And everybody's being probably, this is one of those situations where things are bad, but people are actually doing really good things. So the good news is people are working together and there's lots of resources out there to get help with. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So back to EstimateRocket. So once we figure out what our eligibility is, you can create an email template that's tailored towards your situation. And you may have multiple situations, by the way. So you may in some businesses, you may have a part of your business that's not affected because it's based on essential services like road repair, HVAC, electrical, some painting. There are lots of areas that are still considered essential services that are not, they're affected from the standpoint that you have to have some procedures in place when you're actually providing your services, but they're not affected to the point where you can't work and you can't bring employees in to do that work. So again, got to check that out. But once you know what your status is, then you can create email templates to communicate out to your people with. The templates are great, as you all know. Hopefully you've all used them. It makes that communication much, much faster because you don't have to retype the same message every time. So figure out what you want to communicate, do up a template, and then filter or search for the projects that are affected. Maybe it's all of your pending acceptance projects. Maybe it's your estimates pending completion projects that you need to reschedule. Maybe it's your work that you need to reschedule, but you can craft up a quick email template for each of those different scenarios and blast them out. We've got a web page with a resource, with some resources with some example templates, but again, you really got to check though. You can't just copy and paste them. You got to read them and make sure that they fit your situation. But there's just some good examples of how to communicate with your customers effectively. And in the right way. So I'll share that a little bit later on, and it'll be it's actually a blog page on our website that's actually live now. So that'll be available to you. Create the email templates for fast communications. Communicate precautions you're taking to your crew. So back to communications. So now, earlier I was talking a little bit more about communicating with your team about what's going on and how they're affected and how we can all, get through this and with the least amount of negative impact. Now I'm talking about how to talk to your crew about what are the procedures that we're doing. These are our new standard procedures that we're going to be doing to make sure that when we go into, if we get the opportunity to go into a customer's location, we're going to be, practicing the proper sanitation procedures to keep everybody as healthy as possible throughout this. And once you've talked to your crew, we need the crew to be able to communicate with the customer. And I strongly advise that you create some lists, some materials, similar to the way you create a cut sheet now that you might send out to your customer that explains your prep procedures or your closeout procedures or whatever. Create a document that has that information in it for what kind of sanitation you're doing, what kind of precautions you're taking for, to keep the sites clean. Once you've done that, then it's time to connect. So when you're connecting with your customers, a couple ways obviously to do it. There's email is pretty straightforward and easy, but there's also calling them on the phone. So what I would suggest at this point, once you've got the email templates you want to use done, is that you go into EstimateRocket and you're going to go over to your another tab there. I would go into your projects page, and I would basically target the things that you want to hit. So let's say we've got estimates that are pending completion. So those are all my estimates that are haven't been completed yet. So these are things that are out there sitting on the schedule that we need to reschedule. So these would be a great call list to go down and one at a time open up those projects. I know this is a pain, but you got the project here. Now you can send them an email, or you can just make a phone call to them and communicate with them, let them know how things are going on. If you're doing phone calls, highly recommend that you do up a little script, just like an email. You're not going to necessarily read it right off the script sheet, but if you do up a script, you'll make sure that when you communicate to the customer, that it's going to make sense and it's going to flow, and you're not going to, be doing what I'm doing right now, which is you want to communicate that message as clearly and effectively as you can. So if you do a script ahead of time, write it down. Almost 99% of the time you won't even have to read it, but you get the message across the way you want to. So scripts are really a great tool for that. Where would I be looking in EstimateRocket? Again, I'd probably be looking in a couple major areas. Depending upon what you're trying to do, there's two different kinds of communications that need to go on right now. One is to let people that have already been scheduled know that you may have to postpone it or reschedule it. So that would be estimates pending completion, and of course work orders pending completion. So that will filter your list down nicely just to those projects, so you can go through those. The other part of the puzzle here is you've got work pending schedule. Those are things you haven't scheduled yet, so you might want to go and to those projects and set people's expectations. Okay, they're expecting you to call about scheduling the work. They still need that call, even if that call says, "Hey, I'm not going to be able to call you for 2 weeks because the schedule's kind of up in the air because of the government, because of the government advisories that have been put out that are preventing us from getting into your site." That kind of messaging will at least let the customer know, hey, you're still out there, you're still in business, you just are going to have to, have a little delay before you're going to communicate with them. This communication thing just cannot be overblown, and this may seem like a time-consuming process. It is, but it's critical. I mean, this is the companies that are doing this are the companies that are going to be around and strong when this is over. So really critical to do it. The other category, of course, is pendings. Hey, those are your pending proposals. Reach out to those people. They may be on the fence. You may have an opportunity to turn them with a future offer of doing the work. One of the things that's going to happen when this is over, when it's over, is there's probably going to be pent-up demand. All the people who are wanting to get their projects done that didn't get their projects done are going to want them done. So there's a little bit of motivation for people to get on the schedule, even if it's in the future. I mean, a lot of you already schedule out months in advance, right? So this is one of those situations where now we were scheduled out months in advance, and now we got even more months in advance. It might be an incentive for people, again, even more so, to get put on the pending schedule. Once you get them on the pending schedule, guess what? Once they're on the pending schedule, then you've got a really good reason to communicate with them, right? You've already committed, you're committed, and now when you communicate with them, if 2 weeks doesn't work out, if it's 3 weeks, they're expecting you to communicate with them. It's no longer, I don't even want to hear from them. It's like, oh, I wonder when I'll hear from them to see what's going on. So getting people into that pending stage where they're expecting to hear from you is a good thing. And anything you can do when you're going through your list to make that happen is a really good idea and really good benefit to you to get that pipeline built up for what's going to happen upcoming. Okay, so that's what I would do in terms of grabbing, picking out the projects that you want to work on for who you want to communicate with. Definitely have an email template made up in advance for each one of the ones that you're working with. If it's not a phone call, make it an email template. You can even take your email templates and tweak them a little bit and make those your phone scripts. So you can make them dual purpose, so you're not, duplicating all the work. But highly, highly recommend that. That's what you need to do. So that's the rescheduling process, really, is to go through your project list and see what are we going to reschedule and when. That will help your business when this is all over. Okay, so next thing, working remote. Most of you have probably already crossed this bridge by necessity. So you've probably already experienced some form of working remotely. There are just a ton of tools for working remote. Today, I'm going to discuss mostly things that are involved in the potential for remote estimating. So we're going to walk through that process. I have a little video we did up yesterday. We actually did a run through of what it would look like, but there's lots of tools. Zoom is probably my tool of choice at the moment. It's free for 40-minute or less calls. It seems to be one of the most solid platforms and one of the ones that people seem to be able to get up and running easiest. So one of the biggest challenges in doing a remote estimate with video and with audio is actually getting people connected sometimes. So Zoom is one that seems simpler than most of the others I've used. If both parties have iPhones, then FaceTime is a good option. But the other really great advantage to Zoom is that you can record sessions. Now, you do need to let people know that you're recording the session, but when you're doing this remote estimate with someone, they're going to be talking, they're going to be filming the property that they're walking through or walking around. And having that video is invaluable for you to be able to go back to afterwards and scrub through and say, okay, yeah, now I remember what they were talking about in that area. So the recording thing is really key. GoToMeeting is a great tool. I don't know that they have a free option at this point, but GoToMeeting is one I use a lot, but it is a little clunkier than Zoom is in terms of what I've experienced so far in terms of people getting into it and being able to use it. Join.me is another one. Join.me is actually owned by the GoToMeeting people. Join.me is very simple, but I've had a few instances where Join.me didn't seem to connect properly. But again, not a bad choice. Zoom, I'd probably put Join.me probably should be right below Zoom actually in terms of easiness, easiest to get up and running. Google Hangouts I have not actually used, but it's somewhat popular. I think the problem with Google Hangouts is it does require people to log into Google Hangouts. So, and that seems to be, to me, a little bit of an ordeal. So again, your mileage may vary. Part of these decisions are going to depend upon your clients, because you may get clients that say, well, I use Google Hangouts. You may end up having to use it. So that's something you're going to have to play by ear and decide, if you want to get involved in that. I would typically offer a solution, one solution like Zoom, and make sure you know that cold. And then if you have to use another solution because someone's having a problem with it, then you can always back down and try one of the others. Skype is another good solution. Skype, again, there's a sign up process before you can actually use Skype. Zoom is a little bit more straightforward in terms of making people sign up for something. Again, that's kind of why I keep going back to Zoom. It really does seem to be the quickest, easiest. And many of our customers I've found use Zoom as well. So a lot of you guys are already using Zoom as a tool, and that's always a big benefit. The tool is certainly the one of the better ones to use if it's a good one for sure. Free Conference seems to be making a comeback. I used Free Conference for phone calls in the past many years ago. I don't know that that's a great choice anymore. And then there's always texting and Slack. Slack is a great communications program, not so good for doing like a remote estimate. Today, really, I kind of wanted to focus on the remote estimate concept. So those are some of the tools. I'm gonna actually play a. Did I go too far there? Yeah. I'm gonna actually play a short video that we created, just doing a walkthrough remote estimate, just so you can get an idea using Zoom. Calendly, and you can book me. You can actually have a Calendly or you can book me page that you could collect the information from the customer, and it would send through Zapier. You can create a project in EstimateRocket, and it will send the client back a link to your Zoom meeting, so that handles all that communications. It's also not too difficult to schedule a Zoom and just send the customer out a link in an email template. That's pretty easy too. So don't necessarily have to use Calendly. You can book me. Those just give you another layer of automation. One of the neat things about this type of estimate, though, if it works for you, is this can save you a huge amount of time. This completely eliminates driving. So think about how much time you spend on a typical estimate driving. And now all of a sudden you've got 2 or 3 times more slots in your schedule to do estimates. So the tools we're going to use: Zoom. You could use Calendly or BookMe, EstimateRocket, and here we go. Hey, Ashley, great. Glad you could make our virtual appointment today. We just want you to know our company's up and running, and we're doing great things. And at this point, based on the government statements, we're booking appointments 4 weeks out. We're being optimistic. If it doesn't happen, well, we'll reschedule you, but we thought we'd go through the process and figure out what your areas are that look like that you want to estimate. So what I'm going to ask you to do is just kind of walk around the area, and you can turn the phone out to the other areas and show me where you want to paint.
Yeah. Okay. So it'll just be this room. It's the dining room, and I've got the measurements for you. It is, hold on, it is 12 foot by 8 inches and 13 feet by 5 inches, and crown molding at the top. And then we've got this baseboard trim. Then I'm not actually sure how tall the base trim is, but it'll be the entire area as well as both of the base molding.
Sure. And is that wainscoting down below, is that all painted white? It's a little tricky to see it. It's sort of on the phone.
Yeah. Let's see if I can turn the lights on. Yeah. No, this is actually, these are the same color.
Super.
And then those two are white.
So it's just the chair rail that's white.
Yes. Great. Chair rail. Look, see, somebody knows the correct terminology here.
Perfect. All right. So I'm just making some notes here. And you do want to do the crown molding and the chair rail, correct?
Yes.
Awesome. And how about the ceiling?
Well, I mean, I can show it to you. Would it help if the lights were off? Probably for that one.
No, that's fine. Mainly space and whether you think the area is ready for a redo.
No, I mean, there aren't any visible spots, but I mean, well, you know what? Let's go ahead and include it. I don't plan on doing too much painting anytime soon, so I might as well go ahead and get the estimate for it.
Sure, absolutely. We can always take that out if it's something that you decide you don't want.
Sure.
Well, that's great. That gives me a good idea. And now, what do you call this area?
This is the dining room.
Dining room. Okay. All right. And I actually have your estimate done for you. So what we were doing there is, while I was talking, I had we created a couple new estimating templates, which we're happy to share with folks if they're interested in them. We created some templates that are based on room size, and all the template they're exactly the same as the standard templates. The only difference is they have some defaults. So when she said her room was 11 by 13, I said, okay, well that's pretty close to a 14 by 14 room. So I selected that template, and the 14 by 14 template already has walls, pre-populated for square footage, already has ceiling. We can blank anything out or zero it out if we don't want it, but it's already got them. It's already got baseboard. It had had 2 doors and 2 windows, and I would fill in the chair rail at 56 because that was extra. And also they wanted the crown molding, so I'll fill that in at 56. And while we're talking, I would say, okay, we're adding in the crown and the chair rail. And now we're done. So when she was done in the room, we were done quoting. That video was 2 minutes and 35 seconds. So if I remember to put in the name of the room. And I'm guessing you guys would all say that 2 minutes and 35 seconds is a pretty quick room estimate. Now again, is that perfect? No. Could I use a lot more polish in that? Absolutely, no question about it. But I think the concept is pretty sound, and it certainly gets the customer very engaged in the process. Now, will every one of your customers want to do this? Yeah, probably not. But you may have a lot that do, and when you do, it's a huge benefit for you, because when I'm done with the proposal and we've gone through all the areas, we can turn that around and I can display the proposal to them on their phone and they can sign off. So again, we can complete the whole process in place without ever getting to their site. And the beauty of the video call is that the video call adds that level of personalization that you don't get over the phone. You know, you can see the person, you're interacting with them more clearly, you're conversing with them, and you can see them. It really, really makes a difference. So again, is that the ultimate solution? Well, it is in a time when you can't go on site. So I encourage people to take a look at that. Happy to help if you want us to help work on some templates with you. Like I said, those ones we created, these are just simple. We just copied the standard interior painting template and created to a new one and called it a 22 by 22 room, or a 10 by 10 room, 12 by 12 room, etc., with pre-populated numbers. So if they say I don't want the ceiling, you just delete that. If they say, well, there's only 2 windows in there and there's only 1 door and 1 frame, and you're done. You've already got the dimensions. So just want you to think about that. I think that really is a pretty solid process and could really speed things up. And again, you get to do it remotely, which is a huge, huge benefit. So I think you guys are all bought into everybody who's listening already works remotely. This is just the next level of remote work, which is actually doing your sales presentation remotely. And I will say that during this process and over the last couple months, I've been observing things, and this is the future of your estimating. Now, granted, I'm not talking about certain commercial jobs and things, but in terms of residential work, all kinds of different trades, this is the future. Is going to be doing these things remotely, because in a lot of cases, people don't want you to come over to their house until they're actually ready to do business with you. And this gives you the ability to see them and interact with them, but not have to be there. So I think it's definitely worth investigating. And I admit I could be a lot better at that. I need more skills. This is just a zoom in on those templates that we created. And as I said, if you want to message in, anybody's interested in those, or any template help, we're always there for you to help you create better templates. That's definitely something we can do and love to do to help you out. So working remote, it brings up my performance on that video brings up an old saying about the person walking through New York City asking how you get to Carnegie Hall, and the brilliant New Yorker replying, practice, practice, practice. So before you go out and do your first couple of remote estimates, I strongly suggest that you actually take some time and practice it a few times. Practice it with friends, practice it with family, practice it with your team members, 2 or 3 times at least, but I'm gonna guess after 2 or 3 times, you'll have it down pretty pat and be pretty smooth at it. And I think that'll really help you out in the whole process. So highly recommended that you go that route. So summary of what we're talking about today is don't panic. We're going to survive and thrive. We're going to do the right things, and we will. We're going to use the resources that we have available. So we all have lots of resources available. We don't always like to ask to use them, but this is one of those times where everybody wants to help, and I think everybody's doing a little more to help. So don't hesitate to ask for help with things. People are doing their best to help, and that will help everybody to work out. Reach out to peers for idea sharing. It's definitely a great opportunity to talk to others. Some people are good in operations, some people are really good in sales, some people are good in finance. Everybody has different specialties. This is one of those times where reaching out and sharing your ideas always helps, and you learn at least learn one new thing, and that may have been worth it. That may save the day. So don't hesitate to reach out to your peers for idea sharing. It's really, really important. Try to listen to everything you can. Everyone is going through this. We're all in the same experience. This is one of those really unique things in life, is that everyone is going through this. We're not alone. So understand that when you think you've got it bad, remember everyone else has. It's a level playing field, or it's an unlevel playing field for everyone instead of just one. Final idea, companies that are taking positive action will come out ahead of everyone else. Truly believe that, and I think you all do too. A couple resources, and again, I'll send this out. We've got our help site on how to communicate with customers during these times, just some helpful ideas. There's a New York Times, there's a map in the New York Times that lists out the COVID restrictions, and actually I might have a picture of that. And it basically shows by state what's going on, and this gets updated every day. Great resource to look at, because it at least gives you on a big picture idea of what's going on where and in what states. That's definitely worth taking a look at. I also listened to a presentation by Brandon Lewis, an 8-phase process for how to deal with what we're all going through right now, and I thought it was really, really well done, and I think it's worth a listen. It is laid out well, a little bit more business process oriented than mine is, than what we talked about today, but I really think it's worth listening to. You all may have some favorites too. If you've seen things, I would love for you to shoot them over to me that you think are really good. I'd love for you to shoot them over to me, and we'll put it in the shared resource so that it's available to everybody. This is one of those times to help everybody out, and I hope we do. So with that, are there any questions anybody has? For the video estimate, I got one question. What did I use for the video estimate? That was a Zoom call. So we just used Zoom. I started a Zoom meeting on my phone. I sent the link to the customer, and the customer started up the Zoom on her side, and the customer would look at the phone when we were talking and would turn the phone around and point it at the walls when she was showing the walls. That was Ashley that works with our team. Those are the preset templates with the room measurements available. If you just message in, Quincy, we can add those stuff into your account for you. We'll work with you on that. I don't see that side menu on my dashboard. I have Enterprise. James, if you're on a phone, that side menu is off the screen to the right, and you have to swipe over to the left. I hope that helps. If that doesn't, just message in, and I'm sure we can take care of you on that. Anyone else have any other questions? Oh, there we go. Our costs populated in the templates that we have to put our own costs in. Patrick, if those the templates that I was showing actually use your existing templates, so any of the costs that are already in your existing templates would actually get used in those new templates as well. So those will be pre-populated for you. Ideas. So question about ideas to market or promote remote estimating. That's a great question. Certainly on your website is a great place, and on your website, if you're using benefit to using something like a Calendly or You Can Book Me, is you can have that You Can Book Me collect the information that you need and then send it to EstimateRocket and send an invite to the customer for the meeting. So that's definitely something that we can help you set up. Just message in and we can talk through that. So it sounds like we covered a lot of ground. I hope that was helpful. I enjoyed doing it, and really hope we can help everybody out there to get through this. I know this is it's a difficult time, but again, let's keep thinking positively and keep working forward. And I know we're all going to succeed. So I'd like to thank everybody for attending today. If anybody has any follow-up questions, just please let me know. I'm going to send out. A message to everybody who attended that'll have a link to the web page. If you want to get there now, if you go to our website, it's on this article is actually in the blog. I'll be adding a few more things to this blog page later this afternoon. So I'll probably also send out a message to everybody who attended with a link to the slideshow as well, just in case anybody's interested in that. So we'll get you all hooked up with whatever you need. Thanks for attending, everybody. Hope everybody has a great afternoon. Stay safe and stay positive, and we'll get through this soon.